Mangwanani Malelepo, Vukenjani, Kekras Vanave Africa. Welcome to Africa. Good morning. The news and current affairs show that remains your portal into Africa's most potent stories. You are joined by Ashwin Mberi, and later in the show we will be joined by talent Gore, who is in Harare, Zimbabwe, as she talks about the ascension of the Constitutional Amendment Bill 3, which seeks to extend the presidential term from 5 to 7 years and move voting from public vote to parliament. And she'll also be addressing the issue of migrants who are currently making their way from South Africa, given the deadline which was given today, the deadline for today rather, which was given by the March on March and Dudula movements in South Africa, which are asking essentially for illegal immigrants and foreigners to leave the country. This is Africa. Good morning, and these are some of the top stories we'll be looking at. Anti-immigrant protests expected in South Africa today. Research says migrants are not the main cause of South Africa's economic crisis. Hichilema defends Zambian foreign reserves as campaign debate intensifies. And Uganda media shutdown draws regional broadcaster responses. DSTV 285, GoTV 25, OneUp2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. That is where you can watch us. Top story shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises. From artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative Sport Tourism.
Let's get into our top stories, starting with the biggest story in Africa. Protesters have instructed all undocumented foreigners to leave South Africa by today, ahead of anti-immigrant rallies that many fear could turn violent. Thousands of foreign Africans are returning home or sheltering in camps, although organizers March and March insist their demonstrations are peaceful. Anti-foreigner groups argue that illegal immigrants take jobs from South Africans, place pressure on public services, and contribute to crime. Now, last year's surveys showed increasing anti-immigrant sentiment, with the Human Sciences Research Council poll finding only 1 in 6 adults would welcome all foreigners, while 42% would welcome none. Afrobarometer found 7 out of 10 South Africans viewed immigrants' economic impact negatively, while Ipsos reported that nearly 3/4 of respondents did not trust immigrants from Africa at all. Statistics South Africa reported 3.1 million migrants in 2023, equivalent to about 4.1% of the population. Researchers said available data does not support claims that migrants are responsible for high crime, unemployment, or failing public services, pointing instead to poor governance, corruption, unemployment, inequality, and election politics as major factors fueling growing xenophobia across South Africa. And let's expand a bit on that, because as South Africa is experiencing its most significant anti-immigrant mobilization in years with the emergence of the March on March movement and calls for mass deportation of undocumented migrants, the movement argues it is responding to unemployment, deteriorating public services, and insecurity. Now, research by the Southern Center for Inequality Studies at the University of Witwatersrand says immigration is not not the primary cause of these challenges. More than 4 in every 10 working-age adults seeking employment cannot find work, while public opinion research found up to 70% of South Africans believe immigrants take jobs from locals. Administrative tax data indicates foreigners hold less than 4% of formal jobs, although they account for about 20% of participants in the informal economy. Research also found 1 immigrant worker generates approximately 2 jobs for locals. The study says rising household costs, declining public services, reduced public spending, climate change, and limited social protection have increased pressure on households. It concludes South Africa's challenges require better policy rather than scapegoating, prejudice, or violence against migrants and communities. We now swing over to Zambia, where President Hakainde Hichilema has pledged to keep Zambia's $6.5 billion foreign exchange reserves intact for national emergencies, rejecting opposition calls to redirect the funds towards easing the cost of living. Speaking at the launch of UPND's 2026 re-election campaign at National Hero Stadium, he compared the reserves to seed grain kept for future survival. The rally formally opened the UPND campaign ahead of the 13 August election. Mr. Hichilema said the reserves protect the kwacha against external shocks and criticized calls to spend them. Tonse Alliance presidential candidate Brian Mudubile questioned why reserves remain untouched while farmers face fertilizer prices of 1,000 kwacha and pledged support for artisanal miners through closer licensing offices. Running mate Makebi Zulu also criticized keeping reserves while people were suffering. Mr. Hichilema said his government inherited a debt crisis before restructuring it and building reserves. Vice President Mutale Nalumango said the government was targeting exports of 1 million metric tons of wheat, 3 million tons of soya beans, and $1 billion worth of beef, while investing in energy infrastructure. Mr. Hichilema also highlighted free education, teacher recruitment, and increased copper production targets during the campaign launch. Now, Uganda's leading independent media outlets remain off air following orders issued by Army Chief General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is also the son of President Yoweri Museveni, prompting responses from broadcasters within the region. Nation TV Uganda said it remains committed to independent journalism and hopes to resume serving audiences as soon as possible. The broadcaster added that its journalists remain dedicated to factual, balanced, and responsible reporting, and thanked viewers for their continued support during the shutdown. Now, Citizen TV Kenya described the closure of media houses as a significant development for press freedom in the region. The broadcaster said independent journalism plays an important role in keeping citizens informed and expressed hope that the situation would be resolved peacefully and in accordance with constitutional principles. Citizen TV also extended support to media professionals affected by the shutdown. Have a look.
Media there, news from next door. The decision by Ugandan authorities to shut down NTV Uganda and its sister outlets has sparked uproar, with international media industry players terming it a threat to media freedom.
The media outlets NTV Uganda, Spark TV and the Daily Monitor were forced offline in the early hours of Sunday following a military raid ordered by the Chief of the Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. General Kainerugaba, who is President Yoweri Museveni's son, ordered the crackdown following the publication of critical stories regarding the country's political and security establishment. With more is Mary Moki.
The dramatic siege and forced closure of 2 of Uganda's biggest media outlets continues to spark a massive public outcry and widespread international attention. Uganda's military chief Muhoozi Kainerugaba, who is also President Museveni's son, announced the closure, adding that he did not believe in free press. On his X account, Muhoozi declared that he has ordered the closure of the nation's biggest private broadcasters, affecting the Daily Nation, NTV Uganda and Spark TV, adding that they would not reopen without his express permission. The military chief also declared that all future negative stories about Uganda must be cleared by his office. Both the Daily Monitor and NTV Uganda are owned by the Nation Media Group. Opposition figures and human rights groups have condemned the siege, with opposition leader Bobi Wine terming the military operation an escalation of authoritarianism and a heavy blow to independent voices in the country. Uganda's National Association of Broadcasters also says it is closely monitoring the situation, adding that it was deeply concerned about this action and its impact on the media ecosystem. East Africa Press Council Chairperson David Omoyo called for respect and upholding of media freedom and protection from any form of harassment and intimidation. Omoyo also urged the media to practice restraint and responsibility in its public watchdog role. This is not the first time that the nation media group stations in Uganda find themselves in the crosshairs of Uganda's government. President Museveni's administration shut down the Daily Monitor for 10 days in 2013, and in 2007, NTV Uganda was taken off air months after its launch, following government criticism of its coverage. Mary Mwoki, Citizen TV.
All right, listen to this sad story.
All right, it's time for Talent Gore to join us for the Zimbabwe Report. And in your first story, Talent, you're talking about members of parliament being summoned for an extraordinary sitting, and I assume this has to do with the Constitutional Amendment Bill number 3.
Africa, good morning. Members of Parliament have been summoned to attend an extraordinary sitting this Tuesday to consider and vote for some amendments in the Constitution Amendment Bill number 3, which were made by Senate last week. 75 senators voted in favor of the Constitution of Zimbabwe Amendment number 3 bill, while 4 voted against it. Well, it was clear of 54 votes needed for the required 2/3 majority. There was one abstention. ZANU-PF, which had 33 senators against the opposition Citizens Coalition for Change 27, did not on its own command a 2/3 majority, but 18 traditional leaders and 2 representatives from persons with disabilities who generally vote with the ruling party helped close the gap. Through General Notice 1003 of 2026, Clerk of Parliament Mr. Kennedy Chokuda made the announcement saying all members of Parliament are required to attend the sitting. The National Assembly had been expected to resume sitting on July 7 after initially passing the bill earlier this week. The bill has sparked intense public debate because it proposes constitutional changes that would extend the terms of office for presidents and the sitting parliament beyond the current limit of 5 years. It would change from 5 years to 7 years. And also there are some changes within that Constitution Amendment Bill number 3, like the one which suggests that there will be no direct voting for the president from the public, but rather parliamentarians will be the ones who will be voting for the president after this bill has been passed. Critics argue the changes will weaken constitutional safeguards. The Senate passed the bill on Thursday after adopting several amendments, most of which were proposed by Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Minister Ziyambi Ziyambo. Under Zimbabwe's legislative process, the amended bill must return to the lower house for concurrence before it can be presented to President Mnangagwa for assent. So because Senate made some changes to the Constitution Amendment Bill number 3, it has to go back to the National Assembly for them to rectify and for them to edit, or rather for them to include those changes or those suggestions that were given by Senate. So right now, members of Parliament, the National Assembly, they are sitting this Tuesday to aid those what Senate suggested last week. So after that, the bill would then go to the president. It will be presented to the president for assent. So as of now, that is all on Constitution Amendment Bill number 3. But we all know that it passed the National Assembly, and Senate also approved that bill, but with some changes. So right now, it is going back to the lower house to include.
All right, thank you very much, Talent. Now, as we get into your next story, Zimbabwe's Minister of Information, Publicity and Broadcasting Services, Dr. Jemu Soda, gave an update on the repatriation of Zimbabweans, where a total of 3,624 have returned home. And you can get straight into your update afterwards.
Allow me to recognize my colleague, Honorable Edgar Moyo, Minister of Public Service, Labour and Social Welfare. We also have the Honorable Deputy Minister from the Ministry of Information, Honorable Malupi, PS Mangwana. From the Ministry of Primary and Secondary Education, I recognize Mr. Ndoro, senior government officials who are here, present, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen. Government wishes to give an update on the ongoing repatriation of our compatriots affected by the current disturbances in South Africa. As of the 26th of June 2026, approximately 3,624 of our nationals had been successfully repatriated and received back in the country. To ensure the seamless receiving of returnees, an interministerial team has been deployed and is currently stationed at Beitbridge, working around the clock to facilitate smooth border clearance and provide on-the-ground support to every returning citizen. His Excellency the President, Comrade Dr. E.D. Mnangagwa, has directed the resources towards ensuring the safe and dignified return of every Zimbabwean who wishes to come back home. In compliance with this directive, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has ensured mobilization of logistics around the repatriation of our affected nationals. Government has also deployed additional manpower to assist with the administration of the repatriation processes, ensuring that our consular services are adequately equipped to handle the scale of this operation. We must address the delays that some of our detainees have experienced. Current delays in the processing of detainees are a result of profiling requirements by the South African authorities. This is a mandatory security procedure undertaken by the host country, which entails checking personal data against their national data bank to ensure retainees have no criminal issues in South Africa. Until this process is complete, our citizens remain under South African jurisdiction. We understand the frustration and anxiety this causes, but we assure you that the government of Zimbabwe is making every effort to navigate these bottlenecks. We are doing everything within our power to expedite the process and bring our people home as swiftly as possible. We are also pleased to advise that a special dispensation has been granted to our retainees. Treasury has extended the concessions previously granted to Zimbabwe exemption permits ZEP holders to our current retainees under the immigrants rebate of duty on the same terms and conditions. This is subject to appropriate evaluation to limit potential of abuse by non-qualifying individuals. For motor vehicles, retainees may import one motor vehicle under suspension of duty. While VAT remains payable, ZIMRA will apply flexible valuation.
Now, in my other story, a total of 35,403 Zimbabweans have returned home independently via the Beitbridge border post, compared to over 3,000 who were assisted by the government between 28 May and 27 June this year, as anti-migrant protests continue in parts of South Africa. According to the latest Civil Protection Unit report, the surge is linked to growing fear among Zimbabweans in South African townships, where community groups have been pushed for undocumented migrants to leave by end of day today, which is June 30. Although the South African government says there is no official deadline, the uncertainty has pushed many families to return voluntarily back home. You find out that in the past few weeks, there have been a number of people who have been staying at Zimbabwe's consulate in Cape Town and also in Johannesburg, hoping to be processed, hoping to be helped being processed by the Zimbabwean consulate for them to come back home. And also the government has promised, or rather has said, that it is sending buses to Cape Town and to Johannesburg to assist those who are willing to come back home. There has been a number of teams that have been sent to the Beitbridge border post to assist those people that are coming back home to Zimbabwe from South Africa. You find out that there are families who have been staying in South Africa who are now willing to come back home amid the rise of these anti-migrant demonstrations that are taking place in South Africa right now. Buses continue to arrive daily at Beitbridge border post, mainly from Gauteng, Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal. Immigration officials say the number have risen from one bus a day in late May to 4 daily by late June. Most retainees arrive with belongings, children and little advance notices. The increased arrivals have turned reception and transit points into a hive of activity. The government reception and support center at Beitbridge is now processing retainees round the clock. In addition, partners are scaling up support with food, medical checks, non-food kits, counseling and transport help to onward destinations like Harare, Masvingo and Mashonaland provinces. And also there are different groups that have donated money, like the Bridging Gap Foundation. It donated $1 million to the cause to support those families that are coming back. It directed that money to the local government ministry and department, Civil Protection Department, to help those people who are coming back home for food, for transport, and everything in between that will be needed for their safe return home. The Civil Protection, food, for transport, and everything in between that will be needed for their safe return home. The Civil Protection Unit, IOM, UNICEF, the Zimbabwe Red Cross Society, Health, Immigration and the Zimbabwe Republic Police are working together to manage the flow. The Civil Registry Department is also on site to assist with lost and damaged documents. The Ministry of Primary in secondary education is also working to place returning learners into local schools to avoid a lost academic year. In South Africa, the embassy has deployed additional manpower to document Zimbabweans and assist those in distress, and it is also coordinating with Zimbabwean communities in affected areas to share verified information and to connect vulnerable people to consular support, among other things. So today, like the groups, the anti-migrant groups are saying in South Africa, this is the due date, or rather this is the deadline for all illegal immigrants to return back to their country. And right now we're not really sure what is going to be happening today, but we're just going to be monitoring to see the situation. But in the last few days, we have noticed that a lot of Zimbabweans had been staying at Zimbabwe's consulate in South Africa for them to get help. They were being given food rather by well-wishers, but we are not really sure. And the people themselves who are in South Africa who are willing to come back to Zimbabwe, they're not really sure what is going to happen to them today, as today is the due date for them to come back home. So we're just going to be monitoring the situation, and we hope that the government is scaling up whatever they're doing to ensure that Zimbabwean citizens are brought back home safely. But President Emmerson Mnangagwa, rather late last night, directed that every money and help be directed to the cause for those people to be returned back home safely. So we're just going to be monitoring the situation as the day progresses.